I don't know
They
who
make
this
better
guy
arguments
is.
than you do,
General
bro.
Ben
It's
Hodges,
not my fault
thank
that you
you so
have a
much for your service
low
to this
IQ
country.
than a stripper
You're
and
a
an
hero.
OnlyFans
You're an
girl.
expert. These other guys, I can't take them serious.
Andrew Wilson was brought onto the Piers Morgan show to discuss some hot topics revolved around Trump's recent speech he made to Congress. Alongside Andrew Wilson, Piers Morgan brought on Dave Smith and Jake Bro to share their thoughts as well. Andrew Wilson seems to just have walked into a den of delusional idealists and absolutely wrecked them. He wasn't having any of it. Let's immediately jump in and watch as Andrew Wilson annihilates this entire panel of woke idiots.
It's money that is spent replacing or buying ammunition, refurbishing old equipment that is then loaned or given to Ukraine. And of course, there are no U.S. troops in Ukraine except for those officers that are assigned to the embassy and the Office of Defense Cooperation, whose task is to make sure accountability of every javelin, every artillery round, every set of binoculars. Oh, you can shake your head if you want to. That's a fact. So
why don't you stop pretending that we don't have United States Special Forces on the ground right this second? We don't have CIA agents all over Ukraine right this second. Why don't you just stop pretending? Because it's nonsense. And we all know it's nonsense. This is the way, hang on. This is the way it's been going for a long time. And when you talk about, well, Andrew, what we're actually doing is we're spending a whole bunch of money on refurbishing equipment here instead of buying new equipment to send over there. So what? So what? You're still spending tons of my money on something I don't care about to send over to a nation, which is corrupt as hell. So can we just stop BSing each other for a second?
Yeah, exactly. I don't know about you guys, but I'm so tired of this gaslighting. Andrew Wilson is literally saying what everybody already knows, but these people are too afraid to admit. Like, oh, we're just refurbishing equipment. It's still billions of dollars going into a war that's not ours for a country that couldn't care less about us when the tables turn. So, I mean, yeah, Andrew Wilson is 100% right. Just stop pretending.
Yes, the United States has boots on the ground there. Yes, we have special forces units there. We have CIA agents there, and we would be fools to pretend we don't.
It's an interesting argumentative style that you had. And, you know, I always, when people start calling me names or whatever, then I really, the credibility.
I didn't call you any names, sir. I didn't call you any names. Whatever.
Okay.
What was the name that I called you?
I think the key is this idea of trying to
end actually just offended by tone. You just don't like tone. You know, maybe a little tone policing getting worked in there. Maybe that Southern drawl where you try to make yourself sound likable because you have it doesn't work so well on me because you can't gaslight me with this stuff. It's nonsense. Yes, there's boots on the ground there. Yes, there's been boots on the ground there probably since the beginning. Yes, we're spending $100 billion plus on equipment that we then either send over there. And by the way, there's hidden money going over there too. This is such nonsense. Just stop gaslighting the American people. Stop it. We're not stupid. We've seen this on repeat so many times now.
This is why Andrew Wilson is wiping the floor with them. Every single time these guys get cornered, they start tone policing, throwing out straw man arguments, or pretending that the American public is too dumb to understand what's happening. Sorry, but no, Andrew Wilson is spelling it out in plain English. We're dumping a fortune into a war with no end, and these people still want to act like we're the crazy ones for questioning it.
So many times.
General,
so
respond.
The idea of ending the war, of course, is exactly what we would like to do, but it needs to be an end that is sustainable. And I think President Zelensky understands that he can't just sign or accept an end to the war where Russia will wait for us to lose interest, because we always do lose interest, and then they pick right back up with a resumption of the conflict after we have left or turned our back. And so I think it's reasonable to expect the Ukrainians to want some sort of guarantee, whether that's continued aid, continued equipment, or presence. They haven't. I don't know exactly what that looks like. Obviously, I would prefer to see Ukraine in NATO. We get better the day they join NATO. It's not going to happen anytime soon, especially if the United States is not willing to do it. And the Biden administration also is not willing to do it. But how do we end it when you're the partner on the other side, negotiating partner on the other side of the table is Vladimir Putin? I mean, there's no reason to have confidence that they will live up to any agreement because there's nothing in their history. And I do appreciate that Andrew likes my North Florida accent.
Well, but
let me bring in
I'm
Dave.
sorry,
I want to bring in Dave.
but-
I want to bring in Dave. We've got.
Yeah, I never quite understand this argument that seems to just logically fall apart, that we can't end a war because the war might pick up at some point in the future, and therefore if we don't have a perfect guarantee that, but I mean, what, even if it, I mean, I don't know, I've heard the entire time through this war, including on your show, Piers, that if Putin was successful in Ukraine, then he was going to move on Poland, right? Like, this is what Joe Biden kept saying. This was the official, like, you know, fear mongering of this war. And so if you're telling me that even NATO membership isn't a guarantee, then yes, we never have a perfect guarantee. By the way, you also don't have a guarantee from any government in the history of the world. That doesn't mean that ending a war isn't still a positive. And I just want to go back to what was, you know, brought up initially. You know, the idea that this was a case of failed deterrence, and that if only we had deterred Vladimir Putin sooner, then we could have avoided this whole thing. I mean, let's just kind of quickly overlook the last 20 years of U.S. foreign policy in Europe. We've expanded NATO all the way to Vladimir Putin's borders. We constantly floated out the idea for years that we would include Ukraine at some point, give them full membership. We said point blank in 2008 at the Bucharest summit that we were bringing Georgia and Ukraine into NATO before Russia ended up going to war with Georgia there. And then we I mean, look, Piers, like we've done this before on the show too, right? But just imagine, if you can, have a little bit of strategic empathy and put yourself in the Russian shoes. If Russia, let's say the Soviet Union had never collapsed, and the Soviet Union had poured $100 million into a Mexican street protest that overthrew a democratically elected government, and they had been saying for years they were going to bring Mexico into their military alliance, and then when the new government came up, they recognized them immediately and started arming them, as Donald Trump foolishly bragged about the other day with Zelensky in the Oval Office. Pierce, do you think Americans would feel that was deterrence, or do you think we might view that as a provocation? I mean, like, it's just,
Stop
by
using
the way,
logic,
when
Dave.
Donald
Stop
Trump...
using logic, Dave.
Man, this is classic. The second Andrew Wilson and others hit them with basic logic, their only response is, well, stop using logic. Like what? That's it? That's the best they've got? No counterpoints, no real rebuttals, just please stop making sense. It's ruining our narrative. And that's why Andrew Wilson is mopping the floor with these people.
Well, look, when
Well, let me ask.
Donald
Well,
Trump
rather than me
yes,
try and
very quickly,
answer a very logical question, let me get Jake to respond to that.
So the first thing that he said, what is the concern if Russia takes Ukraine? If Russia can't even go 60 kilometers deep and take the city of Pokrovsk, what is the threat to NATO? And it's, yes, absorbing a country of 40 million people, absorbing a country that has $10 trillion of natural resources under the ground. It's the strategic location on the Black Sea. If Russia absorbs Ukraine, they will Russify the people. They will annihilate the Ukrainian identity, turn them into Russians, and then start press ganging them into the military and send them into meat wave attacks against the Baltics, against Poland and the Suwalki Gap. We're trying to prevent Russia from getting stronger. And I don't care about what Russia thinks or feels. Russia is not a great power. Russia has an economy the same size roughly as Spain. Do you think Spain is a great power that the United States should respect?
Exactly, dude. Listen, we are in the business of trying to be a world empire, and we're going broke. We're $36 trillion in debt because we can't afford to do it. We've blown $8 trillion in the last 20 years on foreign wars.
Why is Donald Trump talking about invading Greenland? Why is Donald Trump talking about invading Panama? Why is Donald Trump talking about annexing Canada? Why is he talking about ethnic cleansing in the Gaza Strip? That is empire.
You lost
red herring.
lost the point.
Stay on
pushing
topic,
for
Liv.
America to be a
You lost
global
the
empire.
point. And
That's
now
a
you're
total
moving.
red herring. Total red herring.
Total
Total
red
red
herring. And by the way, I don't support.
Go
Is
after
the guy
the
who smokes
argument.
and spends all day arguing with strippers and OnlyFans girls going to speak up? I don't know
They
who
make
this
better
guy
arguments
is.
than you do,
General
bro.
Ben Hodges,
It's not my fault
thank
that
you
you
so
have a
much for your service to
lower
this
IQ
country.
than a stripper
You're
and an
a hero.
OnlyFans
You're an
girl.
expert. These other guys, I can't take them serious.
At the end of the day, Andrew Wilson did what Andrew Wilson does best. Obliterated every weak, self-contradicting argument thrown his way. The entire panel was scrambling, shifting goalposts, and desperately trying to salvage their nonsense. But it didn't work. When reality hits this hard, you can't debate your way out of it. Andrew Wilson wasn't just the smartest guy in the room. He was the only one actually making sense.